Well, gonna have to live with that. All right. Without further ado, I believe we're gonna open this 34th annual general meeting of the Canadian Registration Board of Occupational Hygienists. My name is Marc-André Lavoie. I'm the current president of the association for the next hour. So this should be fun. We have lots of things to go, and that's it. So welcome to everybody. The meeting, but if you allow me, I will say a few words in French just to welcome our French-speaking members. Alors bonjour à tous. Merci.
Marc-André, ça coupe un peu, on t'a pas bien entendu.
J'ai plus mon microphone. OK. Excusez-moi. Mon microphone a été désactivé. Comme je disais tantôt, en Nouvelle-Écosse aujourd'hui, c'est un problème provincial. J'espère qu'on va pouvoir s'en sortir. Alors, bienvenue à cette 34e rencontre du Conseil canadien du travail. Malheureusement, par souci de contrôle du temps, la rencontre va se dérouler exclusivement en anglais. Par contre, vous pouvez utiliser le chat pour vos questions. En français, on va pouvoir vous répondre. J'aimerais aussi
Marc-André, we're having some issues hearing you. I don't know if everybody else is having the same thing.
I'm not hearing you.
No, nobody here. So maybe we should pass to the plan B.
Je vais continuer. Sarah, if I get cut again, please take the lead.
Mark,
or see if it's the connection or the computer, and we'll.
Mark, if you could try dialing in through your telephone for audio.
OK, je suis retour. OK, je semble être correct. OK, d'accord, je vais passer au prochain point. Alors. All right. Leah, if you could turn to the next slide. We're going to hold on tight here. The slides are not turning. All right. So I'm going to turn this off here and get this. All right, for this meeting online, there's some rule of conduct. One of them, I hope, is having the speaker that is able to be heard. Of course, we have 72 people online, so it's difficult to have discussion. But at any time, you can write your questions into the chat function, and our moderator, Lucy Marcotte, will either answer you as we go, or we will follow up with answers as we go along. There is some motion that will be put forward during the meeting. I will turn my camera on and off. Maybe it's going to help me. So only active members shall vote for the various items that are being put forward. We're using a system of consensus decision making. So basically, unless anybody form an opinion against the motion, the motion will be carried forward. And as we go, technical malfunction, the chair of the meeting, which is me, may adjourn the meeting, recess, or expedite the meeting. Thank you. CRBOH will be recording the meeting. In the event of a member that has technical difficulty, he will still be able to hear the full extent of the meeting. I think and this is experience right now, this is kind of the motto of the year for us. We had another COVID years, but we tried our best to turn this into another year of opportunity for the association. So here we go. Next slide, Leah. So you have all received the agenda. We just discussed about the various team. The committee reports are a bit different than the previous year, and if you stay till 4 o'clock, you will have 4 o'clock Eastern time. You will have the opportunity to hear 3 of our guest speakers, which is Larry Sloan from the American Industrial Hygiene Association, Ulrich Chung from the American Board of Industrial Hygiene, and Mr. Alan Libowitz from the Board of Global EHS Credential. We're quite pleased to have these 3 members, and I believe Alan is online with us already. Okay, next slide. So the first thing I need to do, I'm going to put forward a motion to approve the agenda, and maybe one of the board members could second the agenda to be approved.
Lucy Marcotte, I second.
Okay. Is there any reluctance that you can put it in the chat, and then Lucy gonna keep an eye on it? So motion is approved. I have a second motion, the motion to approve the 2020 minutes that should have been sent to you with the invitation to the meeting. Do I have someone to second the motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Richard. Anybody against? The motion is carrying forward. Thank you very much. Now, in the next 5-10 minutes, I will give you an overall review of what we have done during the year, and then each of the board members will move a bit forward about details of each topics. The first thing I need to do is to introduce you to the 2020-2021 Board of Directors, and I have been extremely lucky to have worked with such a dedicated team, and we had quite some discussion on certain topics, but it was always done in a very ethical way, and it was lots of fun. So the first one is Spencer Matthews. Spencer is the ROH representative Central and Western Provinces. Shamini Samuel, which is representing ROH for the Central and Western Provinces. Sarah McCurdy, representing ROHT Central and Western Provinces. Lucy Marcotte, representing ROH Quebec. Myself represented ROH Quebec 2. Matthew Brewer, representing ROHT for Eastern Canada. Nitty Young, representing the ROH from Ontario. Richard Kenville, represented ROH from Ontario. Roberto Scroso, representing ROH Atlantic. And the one that we all know personally, Miss Liza Klizonoff, our very dedicated registrar. Thank you. All right, let's move along. All right, I'm gonna try to give you on one slide a brief review of where we were when we started the year after the last AGM assembly last year, and how we set up our priority and where we're trying to go in the future. So our basic assessment of the situation is that we had lots of priority goals that were broad, and they were quite challenging for such a small voluntary group. So we tried to prioritize these things a little bit. We have a key issue, and this is still on the table right now, about our membership that is plateauing. There is some pressure to redefine roles and responsibility of various players in the field of occupational health and safety always in the back of our mind the potentially of achieving recognition via title protection. There's a request from the last AGM to improve, simplify the maintenance point system. We definitely had to deal with an outdated French website. And of course, our financial planning looked like we were deficit. Like Richard will talk more about this, but the board has some investment to cover bad days. But as we were planning year to year, we were running deficit for the last 3 years that were money to cover it, but we felt it was maybe not that sustainable in the long term. So from there, we set up 4 key subgroup. And the first one is the examination committee for obvious reason. The examination committee, the examination is the key, at the heart of the association, to perform exam to recognize competency in the field of occupational hygiene. We feel like we're not known as much as we should be, so we really put a high focus on our communication and promotion strategy. We have set up, in line with the pressure to redefine the role in the field of occupational health and safety, a future of the profession committee. And of course, the maintenance committee was a full review of where we're going and where we want to be. Of course, which is to respond to the COVID crisis. So we did set up a COVID business continuity plan in order to maintain our examination process streamlined and manage to keep doing what we're supposed to do. And then we have our continuous priority from our basic mandate. So we need to deal with external affairs, seamless integration and updating between the English and the French website, and of course, financial stabilities and growth. All right, Leah. Just as a key accomplishment that we felt during the last cycle, we did establish collaborative memorandum of our understanding with 2 organizations, the Women in Occupational Health and Safety and with the BCRSP. And we've been holding regular meetings with the BCRSP discussing about competencies, mandates, and all these things. And we're very happy about this. And we've actually signed the memorandum of understanding a few hours ago. We have been performing active support to the Canadian scientists, COVID aerosol transmission prevention, because this is a true industrial hygiene issues, and it was very nice to collaborate with that group of scientists. We have a new and improved newsletter format. We did merge the registration maintenance and the point committee to streamline the process for our members. The COVID business continuity plan allows us to have a remote location option with approved proctors to facilitate the continuous of our exam process during the COVID crisis. We believe that we have healthy financial outcomes, and we like our new French website. Next slide. It's a little just to a final note on our vision for the future. We really have a good hope about the completed the value of the profession white papers, and we're building from previous documents, in particular work done by the previous communication committee led by Michael Welsh in Ontario. We like the memorandum of understanding approach, and we'd like to continue accelerate this approach. And one thing in particular, we have been approached to adjust the British Occupational Health Society Breathe Freely program to Canada. So that's an exciting item that we have on the table right now. Collaboration with university is still of high priorities. Communication with provincial association, other occupational health doctors and nurses, and other scientists. And finally, we want to continue searching for the proper, adequate tool to make the exam process more accessible while maintaining the current quality that we have. Next slide. So that's it for me. Next up is our dear Sarah McCarty with the Vice President report. Thank you.
Thank you, Marc-Andre. All right, so I just have a quick slide here, and I'm going to be just discussing a bylaw amendment that we need to vote on. And so what this is we have, or would like to propose a change to our 3-year term. And basically, if you voted, sorry, can someone mute their mic? Thank you. So what we're proposing is that if you do get elected into the vice president role within your 2nd or 3rd year of your 3-year term, that it does extend to a maximum of a 5-year term. So this will allow board members, obviously, to become the vice president in their 2nd or 3rd year of their term and allow them to stay on until they become the president, and then after following the past president. And the reason we did this is just to allow some more continuity within the board as we move forward. If anybody has any questions about this proposed bylaw amendment, if you could just put them into the chat function now, and I can answer any questions that you may have. This would not, we're not proposing that we have any more board of directors or anything. Again, this would just extend a 3-year term to a maximum of a 5-year term in the event that they're elected to vice president. All right, can we move to the next slide? So this is my motion to approve the bylaw amendment, and if I could get somebody to second the motion.
I second the motion.
Sorry, can you just state your name?
Oh, Marc Barré.
Thank you. And do we have any opposition? If you do, feel free to speak up or add it to the chat. All right. Thank you, everyone. Next up, we have the treasurer's report, so Richard will be introducing that. Again, caller number 6 needs to go on mute.
Somebody's got their microphone on. Okay. Can we have the next slide, please, Leah? Still some feedback happening.
Yes, we absolutely need, please, I'm writing in the chatter, but please mute yourself. It's somebody with who's calling over a phone who's doing this. So please put the mute on your phone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's much better. I'd like to present some highlights from the treasurer's report. So what we've done in the past year is looking at our revenue situation. We did increase membership dues to $250 per year. We did upgrades to the job posting service, and this resulted in increased revenues as well. We've set the infrastructure in place for doing web online revenue transactions with the launching of frames for sales. Additionally, last year we hosted our first virtual annual general meeting, which resulted in savings with respect to travel. It was well attended and at virtually no cost to the association. The board decided to look at reducing the number of face-to-face meetings to 2 per year to further reduce travel costs. And of course, we haven't done any travel since COVID, so we've had some additional savings, which I'll talk about. We changed our auditors last year, and resulting in cost savings and other accomplishments. We created a committee on the future of the profession towards looking at actions that the organization can take to recruit our young professionals towards the occupational hygiene profession. And finally, we did introduce a new revenue stream for partially retired status, and that resulted in some of our baby boomers leaving, being able to still maintain a status and generating revenue for CRBOH. We've also examined the need to travel to the USICE conference every 2 years, maybe change the frequency and look at the blended video conference meeting once the pandemic is in control. So I want to report to the membership that the measures have resulted in a surplus of over 20,000 in the year's end. Can we go on to the next slide, please? This slide is our audited financial statement. Shows that our total revenue certainly took a dive in 2019 in compared to 2018. We've definitely turned that around in 2020. We've gone from 90.6 to 60.6 and back up to 94.8 thousand for the total assets. In terms of liabilities, more or less similar. We've got accounts payable, accrued liabilities, and deferred revenue. Deferred revenue is basically memberships that are pushed forward because they've been paid early. Next slide, please. And here's our audited financial statement on our statement of revenue. We see that we had a lot more exam activity in 2020, and Liz is going to speak about that a little bit more in her presentation, but it resulted in increased revenue from exam fees from 2019, just about double. We see an increased revenue from the membership dues from our rate increase from 66.8 in 2019 to 79.6 in 2020. Job postings, more or less similar to 2019, but definitely up from 2018. And overall, in terms of revenue, we see a definite increase in our revenue from 2019 to $96,018. Next slide, please. So this is the report from our accountant's report, and shows a little bit more detail. I think the points that you might notice here is that directors' travel expenses markedly decreased because of the pandemic from 36K to 10K, and similarly conference and trade show expenses definitely down from 13K to 3K because we only had one, I think, face-to-face meeting in 2020, so a marked reduction. The end results where our net assets are much higher than 2019. Next slide, please. Again, cash flow, statement of cash flow from the auditor, from the audit report, should I say, shows us in a much better cash position at end of year, 77,000 versus 39,000. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we did change auditors. Scaro and Donald audited our financial position as of December 31st, 2020. And as per the report, financial statements were presented fairly, sorry. Operations and cash flows for 2020 ended in accordance with the Canadian accounting standards for nonprofit organizations. I guess at this point, I'd like to open up the floor to the membership if they have any questions, if they might want to post them in the chat, and hopefully we can answer your questions. I see a post from Altera Hildebrand congratulating the board for changing the financial position. The report looks a lot better than previous. Kudos for that effort in an already challenging year. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you, everyone. I guess at this point, I would like someone from the membership to make a motion to approve the 2020 audit.
Sarah McCurdy can make a motion to approve.
All right, and may I have a seconder, please?
Matthew Brewer, I will second it.
Matthew, you've seconded, okay. Any opposed to the motion? Okay, that means the motion's carried. If we could go to the next slide, please. Finally, I would like to make another motion to reappoint Scarborough and Donald for the 2021 audit. So could I have somebody from the floor make a motion to appoint them as auditor for 2021, please?
Tara Hildebrand, I'll make the motion.
And I see Jennifer Stanley motion to appoint. So looks like we have a motion and a seconder. Is there any opposition to this motion? Okay, I gather then the motion is carried, and that ends my treasurer's report. Thank you, everyone. And now I'd like to introduce Liz Krivana's to present the registrar's report.
Thank you, Richard. And good afternoon, good morning, and hello to everyone. If I can have the next slide, please. I'm very pleased to present the registrar's report. Just as a reminder, especially to some of our newer membership, our membership consists of our current members and through the examination process. We do have 5 different types of exams: the ROHT exam, the NAR accreditation exam, and 3 types of ROH exams through either the fast track process or straight through the full written ROH exam. Next slide, please. So what does our membership numbers look like for 2020 across the country? Well, I'm going to break it down by ROHT and ROHs. So if I can see the next slide, Leah. So I'm starting with ROHTs across the country. We have very good geographical representation, even in the north, which is fantastic, a little bit in the east, and concentrated in Alberta and Ontario. We had 3 members retire, and currently we do not have any international members. And for the ROHs, we have a similar spread, slightly larger numbers of just under 249 members. We have a larger contingent retiree, and we still maintain a number of international members, mainly in the United States. We don't have any representation in the North at this time. Next slide. So in terms of breaking down, looked at the decade of our membership numbers, they've been fairly static, but you can see in the last few years, the total numbers are starting to decline, mainly through the retirement process. You can see the numbers from last year that we lost just under 20 members due to the retirement process, and we see that still continuing on for next year as well. We did, however, institute a retirement membership, full retirement and also partial retirement membership, and we're very pleased to say that we had 5 members take advantage of the partial retirement option, that they're still maintaining their CRBOH memberships, but they're still working part-time as well. So I see that continuing on for next year as well. And what a year it was for the examination process, that P word, the pandemic. Just when it hit full storm in March is when we were going to hold our annual written examinations. And prudently, the board decided to defer the March exam until October of last year. We did have quite a number of people withdraw due to pandemic concerns, and we allowed them to withdraw without penalty. We found, though, that we had such a good response for people writing the exam in October that the board has decided in future to, and for 2021, this is certainly happening, that we will hold now 2 sets of written exams for both ROH and ROHTs. Again in March, which has always been their traditional time, and also in early October. That helps ease with the examination marking and sort of flattens the curve, to use a pandemic term. And we had some very successful exams happening in 2020 and 2021. So with respect to the ROHT members, we'd like to welcome Rochelle McEachern, Victoria Atencio, Mathilde Lutte, and Ronald Ng. I think some of them are in attendance now, so congratulations. And also for new ROH members as well. Thank you, Leah. So we would like to welcome Maya Dabwi Sadina, Abby Alcott of Brett Chopping, Nicholas Manson from last year. And this year we've had successful through either the oral process or the entire written process, Sarah Chan, Ben Curran, Johan Stomer, Madison Seloff, Lyndall Burton, Alex Mercer, who's an incoming new director, congratulations, and Laura Elise Frahel. So congratulate these people. They are absolutely hardworking people, and I'm open to 1 or 2 questions with respect to the registrar's report on the very exciting times in 2020. I'm not seeing anything other than wonderful congratulations to all those hard members that have achieved their accreditation. So I will pass along the committee reports, and I think first up will be Spencer, who will present his report. So thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. As you've probably heard as a thread through the last couple director presentations is the talk of where the profession is going, especially as we start seeing more baby boomers and our not to sound like a millennial or anything, but our elders passing out of the profession. We've decided that we really need to start looking at this because we're coming up to a crossroads as to where the profession in Canada is going. So we have our Future of the Profession Committee, which has been working really hard to look at opportunities for recruitment, retention, and other avenues of bolstering our membership. So we've been looking at a couple of different ways of doing this. So we came up with a mandate to kind of have better recognition and better acceptance within the larger, I guess, industry and public perception of ourselves and how we can be of benefit to that. Leah, can you go to the next slide? So we started looking at the problems, and then kind of like what we did with the board with our other things that we looked at, like financials, we looked at where we are and where we need to be. So as pointed out by Liz previously there, our numbers are starting to decline. You know, we've also had quite a few successful people go through the NAR process who are CIHs becoming ROHs. However, we do still see higher numbers of CIH versus ROH. The other thing too, ask anyone on the street what an industrial hygienist is. And if you get 1 out of 10 people giving you an answer, you are lucky. So our recognition is quite low. So looking at what I just mentioned there with attrition, combating that, kind of getting the public and industry both to recognize the value that industrial hygiene brings to the workplace as well as to the public sphere, because the two are not mutually exclusive. The other thing too is opening up our accessibility so that people can access our resources and ourselves as professionals, as either consultants or within organizations as vested assets, but also looking at what Mark had spoken of earlier with our memorandums of understanding with other organizations and collaborating with these other bodies such as the WOS and the BCRSP, for instance. The other thing we've been kind of looking at too a bit is the legislation side of this thing. If you look to our neighbors to the south, you will see industrial hygiene codified in legislation quite vigorously, where they do have some protections. Next slide, Leah. So what we've been seeing so far in Canada, many are probably aware, especially in the West, of what's happening in Alberta with the Alberta Society of Health and Safety Professionals, looking for title protection for both safety and health, so occupational hygiene as well as occupational safety, and kind of getting a scope of practice protection so that not anyone can just come in, hang out a shingle and say, I'm an occupational hygienist who needs their teeth cleaned, because that's the other running joke where people don't understand what we do. So by joining with these other organizations and working with them, we can start to exert our influence and how we can be of benefit to larger society and industry going forward. So these are continuing avenues that we're exploring, and so far they're proving to be very fruitful. And that's all that I have for the committee at this time.
So hi everyone. So I'm going to talk about the external affair report. Next slide. So as just mentioned, we had new collaboration initiative, mainly with the Women Occupational Health and Safety Society for a memorandum of understanding of the profession, which means that we engage each other's organization to work together toward a common goal of promoting the profession. We also did support the AQHSST. In fact, that should be said in French, AQHSST, which is the Quebec Organization in Health and Safety in Quebec. Regarding there is a revision of the occupational and health and safety legislation right now going on in Quebec. So they needed some arguments to position the role of the occupational hygienist role in some different subjects. We also support the Canadian Scientific COVID Coalition. Marc-André did participate to letters and made some media interviews. And concerning the IOHA, so I just want to say to everybody that we are close to our renewal of the CHIM of the NAR with in 2023. So at that moment, we will have to probably align a little more our documentation with the ISO 17024. So there might be a lot of work going on there. So if ever there is some expert in the ISO 17024, please, and that you want to invest and bring your own expertise, that might be a good thing to know. We will be happy to use your expertise. And also we have with the IOHA, there is the recognition policy to be revised in 2021 by the NAR committee, which clarified the concept of mutual recognition. It means as long as we are a member of the NAR, we are recognized as we do have all requirements to be an occupational hygienist, but there's precision saying that the reciprocity between organizations is allowed in between NAR chain recognized organization. Next slide, please. There is, as Marc-André did talk about it, there is some intention to bring the BOHS Breathe Freely initiative in Canada, which will be managed by Jason McInnes. And also there is some, of course, ongoing effort to outreach other organizations like the American Industrial Hygiene Association and local sections, the Environmental Career Organization of Canada, as well as the Board of Canadian Registered Safety Professionals, and of course the Women in Occupational Health and Safety Society, which is already well going on with the MOU that we just signed. I think that's all for me too.
Thank you, Lucy. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Letty, and I am the chair of the Communications and Promotion Committee. So this is just a timeline of some of the activities that we've undertaken with respect to the newsletter committee. So that's for in October 2020, we published a newsletter, as well as another one in February 2021. And we've actually introduced a new format in the February 2021 newsletter, which hopefully you're all enjoyed. Next slide, please. So a summary of some of our activities. I already mentioned our newsletter that was published. We introduced a new newsletter format last February, and we'll continue on with that format going forward for our next newsletter. We also established a LinkedIn page for the CRBOH. And if any members have any suggestions on articles that you would like to post on the LinkedIn page, please email the secretariat at CRBOH and she will pass it along to the LinkedIn team. As well, just a quick reminder, CRBOH merchandise, our custom frames, as well as our stamp and embossers, they're available for purchase on our website. Next slide. And then lastly, I just wanted to recognize our newsletter committee and article contributors, because without them, we wouldn't have a successful newsletter. So just our editor, Bill Sparks, our translators, Kiet and Capuchin, our members, and also our contributors, Krista, Glenn, Ted, Kimberly, Lisa, and Rob. And then from time to time, we have guest contributors as well, the newsletter. And again, if you have an interest in joining the newsletter committee or providing an article, please send me an email and we'll be happy to have you. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. It's Shamini Samuel. I will be presenting the ROH exam committee report, and Sarah McCurdy will be presenting the ROHT exam committee report. Yeah, just to highlight some notable activities. So we basically spent the year updating some of our internal documents, the exam SOP. We also did have a ROH and ROHT exam workshop with myself, Liz, our registrar, Paul Bozak, and also Dave Gerald in attendance. And we looked at several topics. We looked at, I'll just go through some of them with you, the multiple choice and essay portions of the exam, the frequency of offering our exams, our exam format, and also we did some pandemic planning. So really good workshop. The outcomes of the workshop are currently being reviewed by the board, and once approved, we will be creating some action plans to make sure we proceed with completing some of the action items identified. As mentioned by Liz earlier, with the pandemic, we certainly had to look at our exams and make sure that we made the examinations relatively available, have some flexibility for those who are taking the exams, whether they were written exams or oral exams. We also developed a CRBOH, NAR, and ROH oral exam process and timelines, which would then be used to help us streamline the offering of the oral exam process and make sure that it's conducted in a timely manner. Thank you. Next one. Yeah, so a very big thank you to all our committee members, all our volunteers. So without you, the exam process would not be possible. So big thanks to everybody. And we also have here on this slide a list of all the locations where the exams were held. Next slide. Also, a huge thank you to our chief oral examiners, Andrea Saskorczak, Lydia Renton, Guillaume Lachapelle, and also to all our oral exam panel members in the various cities. Again, without you, this would not have been possible. So a big kudos to each one of you. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, I'll pass it on now to Sarah for the ROHT exam committee report.
Thank you, Shamini. So the ROHT exam process, it's completely independent and separate from the ROH exam. So we do have a separate chair as well as volunteers. So again, just to echo what Chamonix said, thank you to the volunteers. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to successfully have this exam. We did have 3 exam written locations this past year, and so David Gerald, the chair of the ROHT exam committee, he's the one that puts together all of the exams and sends them out to all of the proctors. He's also making a call out for anybody that has questions that they would like to submit. They are eligible for maintenance points if you do submit questions. So if you have some, please send them to David Gerald. We can get you the proper email address for that as well. And just a note of the one thing that we are working on is making sure that our ROHT exam question database is translated into French. So we do have some budget allocated for that. So that's one of the projects that are going to be ongoing for the ROHT exam. Next slide, please. All right, now we're moving on to the registration maintenance points. Matthew, go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah. So for those of you who have been around for more than 5 years, you're aware that we have the registration maintenance points. You send in your maintenance sheets, your worksheets, and we review them. In this past year, for ROHs, we have had 66 that were due in the past 5 years, for the past 5 years section. Of those, 85% have been submitted. 50 of those have been successful. We're reviewing 3 of them, and 3 of them are being audited. So we're short 15%. So if you have any due, by all means, send it in. One thing to keep in mind, and this goes forward for both ROH and ROHT, is that we have modified the number of points. You may have noticed that in one of the emails that have gone out from the communications group or from the newsletter, which states that we have modified the number from 50 to 42.5 points for this past 5-year period, because the COVID pandemic has impacted the ability to be able to attend events and that sort of thing to develop maintenance points. And as you can see, we have a number of member volunteers. We thank them very much for all their hard work for the reviews. So next slide, please. For ROHTs, we've had 12 that were due for this past year. Of those, we've had 58% come in. So if you happen to be an ROHT that has been notified that you are due for your maintenance points for the past 5 years, I would ask to have you submit your maintenance information, your maintenance sheets, as soon as possible. We've reviewed 58% of them so far, and they've all passed. That would be 7 of them. So there's 5 of you out there, you know who you are, that we need to have your points in. If you're concerned about it, we would recommend that you have that there's 42.5 there's 34 that you need versus the 40 that you would be required to have otherwise. And again, I want to thank our maintenance team here, our maintenance volunteers who have been working greatly towards putting forward all this information. Next slide, please. Now, this is the one that I think is going to have the biggest impact. It's been a big change that we've made in the past year as a board. We decided before 2020, before 2020, we had maintenance points that were sent in. Oh, I apologize. In the last one, I had the wrong name. I had Jody Johnson. It is as mentioned in the chat here. Let's see, Jody Johnson. Yes, thank you. So before 2020. When it came to maintenance points, events, you would submit your information for what courses that you would like to have points submitted for, whether it be a safety conference or a hygiene conference or a webinar. And we would develop maintenance points for that. And the maintenance points committee would actually work on that and then put forward the information. As of 2020, we've merged that group with the registration maintenance points. So what happens now is that that you don't need to pre-submit for a course. What happens is when it's time for your maintenance points to be reviewed, your worksheet, you send in your worksheet, we will review that and take a look at them on their merits. If we decide that there is something that doesn't look quite right or we have questions about, we will reach out and we'll get you to submit some added information. So by all means, continue to gather the information, file it away, just in case you get the audit. And based on that, we'll be able to do a better evaluation of your information. So that's what our group's been doing. We've been working hard at keeping you all up to date. So thank you very much. And unless there are any questions, I will hand it over to our next person.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt, and thank you for all the board of directors for your nice presentation. It is my privilege now to present the award section of our meeting. And this year is a special year because we used to have one award and we will have two awards this year. So we'll take our time and run through this slowly. So next slide, please. Oh, I have changed the slide. All right. All right, it is my honor to introduce you that after 34 years of the existence of the association, we have decided that it was time to have a Lifetime Achievement Award. And it went kind of a pretty short discussion about how we should name this award. We've decided to name the awards after a person that was one of the founder of the association, and that has been a great influence over the years in all aspects of occupational health, starting from educational, but also voluntary work and regulatory work. Like this lady has been a consistent force in occupational health across Canada for the last many decades. So it is my great pleasure to introduce everyone to the new Andrea Sass-Korczak Lifetime Achievement Award. And as it is the tradition, the first recipient of the award is Andrea herself. And I would like, Andrea, if you could turn your microphone on and say a few words for us, please.
Yes, well, thank you. I'm extremely honored, and I did want to show everybody that this is the award that came, and unfortunately, I don't think you'll be able to see it. But I am extremely honored to receive this newly created Lifetime Achievement Award, and I sincerely thank the Board of Directors. I feel particularly privileged to not only get such an award, but to have it named for me, and that makes it a very special double honor. So a special thanks goes to those who spearheaded the creation of this award. I'm very grateful to all of you. Now in the early stages of retirement, as I reflect back, I feel very fortunate to have had a career at U of T that I've enjoyed tremendously, and where I have worked with so many wonderful, dedicated colleagues. I've been fortunate to be able to participate in the development of CRBOH from its inception. And it goes back to 1983 when OHAO, the Hygiene Association of Ontario, established a task force to consider the issue of registration or certification of occupational hygienists. After consultations across Canada, there was consensus that this needed to be a pan-Canadian effort. So in 1986, the Canadian Registration Board of Occupational Hygienists was incorporated to standardize qualifications and hopefully to establish professional status for the discipline in Canada. And it ultimately had the support of all of the provincial hygiene associations. I was appointed the first registrar, a post that I held for 6 years. And in 1987, just after we became incorporated,
I was appointed chair of the exam committee charged with developing the national competency exams. Now, at this time, we didn't have ROHTs, we just had ROHs, but that came later. The very first exams were held in the spring of 1990. And in fact, over 30 years since, the ROH and ROHT are recognized internationally as a mark of excellence and professionalism. And, you know, I think that's really quite an achievement for CRBOH. Very little that one does or achieves is done in a vacuum. So I'd like to acknowledge all of my colleagues, both at U of T and across Canada, who have shared my dedication to this wonderful profession, volunteering their time on the board of directors and or on the many committees. And you know, we've just heard all of the committee reports, and really this has truly been a collective effort. As an educator, my primary passion has always been teaching and the development of our profession. So I'd like to thank my many wonderful students. They keep me grounded, current with technology, and in touch with the next generation. Over the past 39 years, I've learned at least as much from them as they have hopefully learned from me. One last thought, and I have to admit that I was doing an oral exam until about half an hour ago. So I joined late to this meeting, but it's been and so this may have come up, but it has been an especially challenging time for CRBOH operating in the past 18 months with COVID. But as hygienists, we practice what we preach. And as Shamini mentioned just a little while ago, the board of directors worked with the exam committee chairs to develop systems to allow CRBOH to continue offering exams safely while maintaining our high standards and the integrity of the process. And I just wanted to thank the board for organizing all of these things and allowing us to continue the development of CRBOH. So once again, many thanks to all of you. I'm extremely grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just for the information of everyone, because of the situation, we would have liked to have a kind of more formal format for Andrea. But Andrea, we will try to do a 15-20-minute capsule with Andrea. And at the time, Andrea, you'll be able to show the plaque that we got for you that will I hope remind you of all the nice work that you've done over the year.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It was such a pleasure. Can we move to the next slide, Leah, please? I'd like also to congratulate our 2021 Student Award winner, and the award goes to Marianne Riscala from University of Montreal. Marilyn will receive a bursary of $500, and she will also have her exam fees written off when times comes. Congratulations. For the other university, just a reminder, it's the second year in a row that it's a student from University of Montreal. So let's keep the competition, the good competition among our institution going. Thank you very much. Now, other business. I think we're doing fairly good on time. We're a few minutes late. Sorry, Lawrence. I'm not sure if our presenter are back already, but it is my pleasure to introduce you to our new incoming president. The new president will be Sarah McCurdy, ROHT from West. Sarah has been with us since 2018, and it looks like you're going to have a 5-year mandate. Sarah, congratulations. Sarah is an occupational hygiene technician and fatigue management specialist with the Canadian Pacific. headquarters in Calgary, Alberta. And she really has been a key player, at least during my mandate as president. I don't know how I would have done it without Sarah. She's very and thorough. She's been our treasurer for 2 years, and she's got that rigor that is really helpful for the association. So, Sarah, welcome, and I will pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Mark. I have big shoes to fill. All right, so I'm going to introduce our new directors. So we have Alex Mercer. She's joining us as our ROH for the Central Western Canada, and she is currently the operations manager for Jada Solutions based in Sherwood Park, Alberta. You guys will have copies of this so you can read their little bios, but she has a very impressive educational background, and it seems to be a very busybody at home with a husband, toddler, newborn on the way, a dog, and 6 cats. So welcome, Alex, and I look forward to working with you. Next up, we have Suzanne Wild. Suzanne is joining us from Stantec Consulting, and she is a Director of Industrial Hygiene and HSSE. Suzanne has over 17 years of experience in the field and holds a master's degree in occupational health from McGill University. I'm looking forward to your experience on the board. Suzanne, thanks for joining us. And lastly, I want to thank our outgoing directors, Richard Quenville, who's been on the board for the past 3 years as our vice president, president, and treasurer. You've done a lot of hard work throughout the board, so I appreciate your time and commitment, as well as Chamonix, our ROH for Central Western provinces. I just wanted to thank you for your time and dedication. I think you've been on the board for at least 6 years, if not more, to my knowledge, and held many positions throughout. So I just appreciate all the time commitment that you both have had, and all the support that you both provided.
Thank you, Sarah.
Next slide, please. All right, so again, just use the chat function if you guys have any questions about any part of the AGM. We'll have a quick 5-minute bio break here, and then we'll get right into the session. You can also email our secretariat if you guys have any questions as well, and we can most definitely provide you a response.
Very good, Sarah. So we're running slightly late, but I see I have yes, I think Larry is having difficulty getting connected, so we'll take the 5 minutes. So we will resume at 4:10, 5 minutes, and we'll move on with the presentation. Maybe lastly, I need to have a motion to adjourn the formal section of the General Assembly. Can anyone put the motion forward?
I make the motion, Richard Quenville.
Anyone to second?
Sarah McCurdy can second.
Anyone opposed? The motion to end the 2021 General Assembly is approved. All right, we'll see you all in 5 minutes sharp. Thank you very much. All right, everyone. Just about to go again, maybe 1 minute on my maritime clock.
Hello, Mark. This is Larry.
Hello, Larry. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Sorry about that.
We're sorry about that. Don't worry. It turned out that we got 5 minutes late, so it kind of just fitted perfectly.
Okay.
Good choice. You made a good choice of being late. All right. Like that's a moment when I tell usually everybody to go back to their seat. We're just about to start again. Uh, so I forgot to say something about Sarah McCurdy, that is our new president. Sarah has been named among the 40 top influential women in occupational health and safety. So she received that. She was on that list last year. So we're very pleased to have her with us for the year to come. Yes, a reminder for everyone to keep your microphone closed. We will take a question in the chat, and at the end we hope 10-15 minutes discussion where we might try to open question for Larry and Alan, and I have a little blank. Marc Andre, this is bad. Larry, can you help me?
You ready for me to share my screen?
Third person was going to be Ulrich Chung.
Yes, Ulrich. Sorry, Ulrich. All right. No, I'm just going to introduce you, Larry. I'm going to introduce the three speakers, and then you'll be ready to share your screen. So today we've decided to have a special presentation that deals with our priority that we have established during our board meeting. People that could influence us in terms of setting up the future of occupational health profession in Canada. And we want to have inspiring perspective from Larry Sloan from the AIHA and from the board of Global EHS Credential, which both of them have done things quite exciting. And it was for me an obvious choice to invite these three gentlemen to come and speak with us. Larry, I'm going to do this shortly. Sorry, people will receive the slide and they'll be able to go through the full resume of our presenters. But Larry seemed to be, you were born to be a CEO. That's what I can see. And but I like to see your experience in the chemical field. And as you know, many industrial hygienists comes from the chemical. Great experience. We will have Mr. Ulrich Chung also that is going to talk to us about how to grow the EHS specialty, external relationship, and ethics. And Ulrich is the current CEO of the American Board of Industrial Hygienists, that is now the board of Global EHS Credential. And finally, we will have Alan Lebovitz. Well, actually, Alan and Ulrich will speak both together as a team sport approach. And without further making you wait, I will just we will pass the screen to Larry Sloan. Thank you very much. Larry, it's your turn.
Okay, very good. Let me share my second screen here. Good afternoon, everybody. Hold on a sec. Okay, can everybody see my slides?
Not yet, Larry.
Not yet? Okay, hold on 1 second. Sorry about that. I guess the platform is not cooperating with me. Let's try this. How about that?
There we go.
All right, let me put that into slideshow mode. Still see it?
You bet.
All right, super. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It really is an honor and a privilege to be speaking to you this afternoon. I got to tell you, I'm a little bit tired of Zoom and GoToMeeting, and really hope that we can soon all be together in person. So I really appreciate everybody sticking around. I'm sure this has been a very informative but a rather long day for the attendees. So I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes giving you a quick overview of AIHA and what we've been doing in response to the pandemic, and also what we've been doing in response to how we are branding ourselves. So for those of you who are not familiar with AIHA, we are a 501c6 organization that is a U.S. IRS tax exempt descriptor. And the AIHA is organized as shown on this slide. There is the membership portion of the organization, which counts at about 8,500 individual members, mostly in the US and Canada. On the far right-hand side, we have two foundations, which are called 501c3s. One is the Education Foundation that awards scholarships to students that are studying occupational hygiene in both undergraduate and graduate school programs. And the other is the Guideline Foundation, which develops what are called Emergency Response Planning Guideline Values. These are basically TLVs, or occupational exposure limits, for the community. If there is a rail car accident or a chemical plant explosion, what are the values that are specific to the community, not the workplace? We are the only ones right now in North America that develop and update these ERPG values. And then in the middle of the slide, you see three limited liability corporations. These are for the lab accreditation space. There may be some laboratories up in Canada that are accredited by the AIHA Lab Accreditation Program. We have a proficiency testing program, which is basically a series of tests that labs go through to ensure that they are competent in what they do. And then we have a registry program, which I call Certification Light. So it's not quite the CIH, but we have one, for example, for safety data sheet authors. And we have another one that's been around for several decades for asbestos analysts. In the lower left-hand corner, we have the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Health, which is a joint venture between AIHA and ACGIH, and that is a peer-reviewed technical journal. And then finally, we have an allied association called the Product Stewardship Society. Product Stewardship Society began about 10 years ago, and it is made up of product stewards. Some AIHA members that are occupational hygienists are also members of the Product Stewardship Society. There are about 400 individual members of that group. So that is the entire AIHA enterprise, a little more complex than a traditional scientific society. AIHA has a strategic plan like many other organizations. The mission or the purpose of the AIHA is to empower those who apply scientific knowledge to protect all workers from occupational hazards. And our vision is our aspirational statement. We expect to work toward a world where all workers are healthy and safe. We are in the process right now of updating our strategic plan. I'm very excited about this, and that will take effect in January of next year. The current strategic plan has what we call 5 areas or domains, and everything that we do or provide falls under one of these 5 buckets. So when we talk about community building, we have an online community platform where members get together to exchange ideas. Obviously, at our conferences, we have a variety of networking events. That speaks to the domain of community. We also have technical committees, we have special interest groups, and we have our local sections across the US and Canada. Awareness is all about awareness of AIHA and the wonderful things that we do, as well as awareness of the profession. And this is something that we're spending quite a bit of time and energy on. How do we generate greater awareness about the profession? And specifically with respect to the pandemic, we've gotten a jump start on generating some very nice publicity for the profession over the last 12 months or so. Advancement of knowledge is all the education that we put on, and all the guidance documents that we publish, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Integrity of practice has to do with our LLCs, our lab accreditation programs, the proficiency testing, the registry programs, as well as the work that we do in standards. And then finally, advocacy speaks to our government relations efforts, mostly at the US federal level, as well a little bit at the state level. So again, all the programs and services that AIJ provide are all categorized under one of these 5 areas. Every organization should have a set of core values. These are the values by which AIHA lives. I'm not going to read this slide, but you can look at them later on. You'll get a copy of all of these presentation materials. I do want to draw your attention to the 5th one, which is all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is an area that we're really trying to strengthen our efforts in. All of the open calls that we send out to participate in committees, advisory groups, the board of directors, we're trying to pay closer attention to the diversity of the members that make up these various groups. This is something very important to us. And that's not just diversity in terms of people of color or cultural backgrounds, it's also diversity of thought. So we're really trying to pay closer attention to how we populate our various volunteer bodies. So let's talk now a little bit about our brand evolution. At the beginning of the hour, I mentioned that in addition to the pandemic, we decided to launch what's called a brand evolution in 2020. And this really came about after a series of years in which we realized that the way we communicate with the outside world needed to change. In the United States, of course, the classic definition of our profession or the moniker is industrial hygienist. Up in Canada, it's an occupational hygienist. A lot of people don't really know what those words mean. And so we did a lot of surveying work and environmental scanning using the services of an outside brand management company based in Chicago. And we decided that we really needed to pivot in how we explain what it is that we do and what our value is to society. So this slide has a little YouTube link. You can look at it later, and it explains a little bit about the history behind why and how we launched this brand evolution. So for over 80 years, AIHA has served those who are dedicated to keeping workplaces safe and healthy. But we're finding that the members that make up AIHA are not the traditional occupational hygienists. If you go back 2 or 3 decades, a lot of our members were working specifically in the industrial space. They were working in the chemical industry or in the general manufacturing industry. But these days, we have a lot of members that are working in the non-industrial space. They're working in hospitals. They're working in the commercial space, in office buildings, in retail establishments. We are expanding our focus to the non-industrial sector. And so we felt that as we pivot in how we explain who we are as an association and who we represent and what our value is to society, we needed to change the moniker from IH to OEHS. And so what we did obviously was more than just change our colors and our logo and our tagline. What we decided to do was to really go out there and change the About Us statement. So this About Us statement is now listed on all of our press releases. It's all over our website. It's all over our guidance documents, on our position statements. We are the Association for Scientists and Professionals committed to preserving and ensuring occupational and environmental health and safety, not only in the workplace, but also in the community. So this is a much broader umbrella than traditionally defined by AIHA. And that's really important. And so when we talk about our brand evolution, we talk about 3 prongs to the campaign. How do we generate greater public awareness about how great a career in OEHS is? How do we educate the public? As I mentioned earlier, the pandemic gave us a wonderful opportunity to step out and be interviewed by countless media outlets on what we're doing to respond to the pandemic. And then selfishly, how do we leverage this awareness and how do we leverage this public education to recruit young students into the profession? How do we tell a compelling story to somebody who may still be in middle school or high school? How do we tell somebody who's studying a life science in college or engineering like I did? And how do we say to them, you know what, if you're not excited about your career and you decided maybe you made a mistake in studying chemistry or biology, how about considering switching over to occupational hygiene? So these are the 3 prongs that makes up the brand evolution campaign. To this end, we've created 2 microsites. One is called workerhealthsafety.org. This is designed to educate the business C-suite and other business leaders in specific industry sectors about the value we offer society. The second one is oehscareers.org. That one is designed for students of all ages. So you'll be able to go to that website, for example, if you want to go out in your community and talk to a series of, I don't know, a science class in middle school, or a class in high school, or maybe even talk to some STEM club in your university, in your community, you'll be able to download materials that you can then customize for that outreach. And we're going to continue to embellish both of these microsites in the months ahead to make sure that we have the right materials for the right target audiences. We've done quite a bit of media outreach, and we participated in a virtual science and engineering festival called SciFest 2020. We will be participating in the next festival, which will be held, God willing, in person in 2022. So when we talk about the terminology, and this is a little bit of inside baseball, when we talk about OEHS, this is when we are talking to an external audience. If we are referencing the profession in publications that are designed for the people that we are trying to help, we will talk to the profession as OEHS. If we are developing educational offerings, webinars designed for the downstream end user audience, the people that we're trying to help, OEHS is how we're going to explain who we are. If we are talking mostly to ourselves internally, to our members, then we might use OEHS, or we might revert back to IH. So we're not trying to take away from the fact that those of you that have been grown up in this profession, you've earned your COH or your CIH, you can still call yourselves an occupational hygienist or an industrial hygienist, but you can also call yourself a broader member of the OEHS community, if that makes more sense to the audience that you're talking to. The words occupational and environmental and health and safety, through a lot of focus group testing that we've done over the last 4 years, resonated very favorably. If I go talk to a school of undergraduate majors, for example, in biology, which I've done, or chemistry, or I talk to a series of high school students and I say the words OEHS, that resonates very clearly with them, as opposed to my saying, I represent the Society of Industrial Hygienists. They look at me like, what are you talking about? Okay, let's move along very quickly to the pandemic. Many of you know the story as to how the whole Back to Work Safely campaign got started. You all should know a gentleman named Mark Cuban. He is the Shark Tank guy, if you guys are familiar with that program that airs on US channel CNBC. And he had been appointed to a presidential task force to respond to the pandemic last spring. Long story short, one of our former presidents, who was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, somehow managed to get in touch with Mark Cuban, who's also from Pittsburgh. They established a repertoire. And Mark said, the challenge to you, AIHA, is if you're all about workplace health and safety, you need to step up and develop guidance, because the US federal government isn't doing it. And so he challenged us to develop the first set of guidance documents. And that's exactly what we did. The point here was to get information out into the general public that was based on the science and that was going to provide guidance specifically to small businesses that didn't have that internal expertise. We weren't trying to educate the large chemical companies. We were trying to educate the smaller businesses. And one of the first guides that we created was for restaurants, because most of the restaurants out there are small mom and pop businesses. Every guide is developed from the perspective of what can you do as an employer? What can you do as an employee? And what should you be doing if you are a customer to that small business establishment? So that is the way each and every one of these guides is developed. Now, all of the guides, and there are a total of 27 of them, they're all being updated as we speak because the science has evolved since last spring. And so we've reorganized the guides and we'll be issuing them later on this month. They're all going to continue to be free of charge, and they're all going to be updated in Spanish. And I got to tell you, the reception from our sister associations, not only in Central Latin America, but also those that speak Spanish as their primary language here in the United States, has been overwhelming. So all of these guides follow the hierarchy of controls. And we talk about what steps can be taken that follow the elimination of the hazard, the engineering controls that need to be applied, and so forth and so on. We follow what's called a layered approach to risk management. For example, when you look at engineering controls, which is really the heart and soul, what types of things need to be done in a small business establishment? Separation of work locations, installation of physical partitions like plexiglass, increasing your air exchange rate, using HEPA filters, so forth and so on. These are the common sense guidelines that are baked into each and every one of these 27 guidance documents. And these are the industry sectors that we represent. As you can see, we tried to focus on industry sectors that are predominated by small business enterprises. Over 1.5 million website views, 1.25 and counting million downloads across all of these back to work safely documents. And a large majority of those downloads, by the way, are the ones that are in Spanish. They are featured on the CDC website, and they've also been quoted in a variety of mainstream publications. This is really big news for AIHA and the profession. We've never had so much coverage in mainstream media as we have over the last 13, 14 months. Now the challenge is to keep it up, because once the pandemic becomes a distant memory, we have to keep the pressure up and remind the public that we have a very defined purpose and add significant value to businesses large and small. This slide, you'll get the copy of these slides, lists all of the other COVID documents that we've created over the last year. These are the non-back to work safely documents. You can see they cover a range of topics from UV disinfection to personal protective equipment to engineering controls, et cetera, et cetera. Each of these documents has been downloaded countless times from our website. They're all available free of charge, and most of them are all translated into Spanish. With respect to the collaboration work that we've done over the last 14 months, it has opened up doors with a variety of associations. Many of these associations are in the broader OEHS space, but as you can see, there's a variety of them that are also in the down user space, like the American Dental Association. We would never have collaborated with them if it weren't for COVID. The American Library Association, the National Association of Secondary School Principals. As we develop the guidance documents for these particular industry segments, we reached out to the society or the association representing that industry sector. And that's how we've been able to foster relationships. So we learned some very important lessons. Perfection cannot be the enemy of progress in the middle of a crisis. We have had a tendency to mull over and edit and re-edit and re-edit these documents before we publicize them. We decided to not be such a perfectionist. And so obviously these documents are all living documents, and we will continue to make edits to them over time. But we decided we couldn't cross every single T and dot every I, as the need for the information was mission critical last year in the middle of the pandemic. So we published these pieces very quickly, and now we're going back and making adjustments as needed. And so with that, I'm at the end of my 20 minutes, and I thank you very much. And I guess I will turn it back over to Mark.
Thank you very much, Larry. That was fantastic. I just want to say that I did use many of those documents in my practice, and I was so pleased to be a member of AIHA when I saw those. We'll keep the questions and discussion for after our next presenters. So our next presenters are Alan Lebovich and Ulrich Chung from the we have to get used to these new names, from the ABIH and the Board of Global EHS Credential. Alan, Ulrich, are you guys good?
We will be. Ulrich is going to be guiding the slides, so when he gets them on screen, we'll start.
Do I need to delegate this slide sharing back to you? How do I do that?
I believe all you have to do is to stop sharing.
Stop sharing. Yeah. Hold on. Stop sharing. Tell you what, I'm going to get out and get back in.
Oh, that looks you got it. On your left. Alan?
Yeah, somebody needs to give me control of the screen. Make me the presenter. This is Ulrich.
Okay, Ulrich. Leah, are you good on this?
Yeah, I was just looking for Ulrich in the, is he the one that's listed as board?
I'm BFGC, I think.
I see him as BC, Board for Global EHS Credential.
Yeah, I see you now. There you go.
Thank you, Leah.
Okay, thank you. Got it. Voila.
Remember that for years. Voila, bravo.
Okay,
it's all yours now.
Okay, thanks. Okay, go ahead, Alan.
Thank you, Ulrich, and thank you
for the folks for inviting us to present. We're very proud of our longstanding collaboration with the Canadian Society, and we continue to enjoy working with you going forward, as we do with many associations around the world. We are the Board for Global EHS Credentialing. Both Ulrich and I represent that group. Sometimes folks have a historic memory of ABIH being the lead organization, but that changed just a couple of years ago, and we're going to talk about that. This is our current board of directors, and includes, I'm proud to say, a Canadian, Kelly Fernandez, is our new Canadian member from last year. You move on, Ulrich. You've already seen this. If you want to read that much more about me, you can here, but we'll move on. So kind of an overview of what our discussion will be. We'll talk about our role as a credentialing body. We'll talk about our choice to rebrand the organization, our focus on maintaining appropriate rigor in our credentials. Some folks are really find them challenging to obtain, and to a certain extent that's intentional. We want to be able to ensure that folks who use our services, the people, the organizations, the corporations, the governments that rely on CIHs, QEPs, and the other credentials we hold, can be assured that they have folks who have all the skills and requirements necessary to meet what they're committed to do. We'll talk some about the struggles we've faced. You've heard what your organization has faced over the past year. We have some of those too, and just so you won't feel like you're alone, we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll focus on ethical practice, one of our key in things that we look at when we're performing our functions, and really talking again about the importance of our external relationships, including with our brethren to the north. If you move on. This just gives you a fake example of our diversity, but it is one of our key ideas of what we're trying to do with our community. And as you saw with our board, we have a very diverse board. And that's one of the things we focus on as we select new diplomat. Well, we don't select diplomats, but when we select new people to board members, we do focus on diversity each year. Next slide. But one of the things that was thrust upon us, and this is for all of us, both you and Larry and all the organizations, there was a real challenge that we faced last year and in the preceding years, that we were going to have changes thrust upon us by chance. And we made a decision to grab a hold of the reins and really focus and make decisions about the changes that would happen to our credentials and how we approached the credentialing bodies that we tend to work with. If you remember, I talked a second ago about our being the ABIH, and next slide. This is what you would have recognized in the past. It's what a lot of people around the world still recognize, but we've moved on. Next slide. We're now the Board for Global EHS Credentialing, with our tagline of being precise, rigorous, and essential. Our mission is to be the leader in EHS credentialing that elevate the technical and ethical standards for professionals who practice the science of evaluating, protecting, managing, and enhancing the health and safety of people and environment. And that's not just the CIH, and that's one of the main reasons for the change that we had in branding, is that we've become a lot more than just the CIH. Next slide. We started out as the American Board of Industrial Hygiene with the CIH and a credential that's now somewhat disappearing. There's just a few people who still hold it. We no longer grant it, our CAIH. We then aligned and took into our fold the Institute for Professional Environmental Practice, the QEPs, and the EPIs, both environmental credentials. We worked with AIHA and the product safety folks to create a new credential for the Product Safety Society. And so the CPPS was developed last year, brand new credential. And we also brought on board the credentials from the Board for Environmental Health and Safety Auditors, the CPEA and CPSA just last year. So we got our hands full, but we no longer were just the American Board for Industrial Hygiene, because we were much more than just industrial hygiene. And that was the reason for going to the Global Board for Global EHS Credentialing, which focuses on this broad array of environmental and safety and health credentials that we're really focused on integrating and ensuring that we continue to provide the highest level of credential credibility and rigor that our credential holders expect of us. Now I'll turn it over to Ulrich for the next few slides.
So until relatively recently, our primary credential was the CIH, but in bringing on new environmental, product stewardship, and auditing credentials, we had to look at what has made the CIH program successful, and we're applying the same level of rigor to our new credentials. So the purpose of a true credential is to protect the public by identifying who has academic and work experience and who meets the required level of knowledge and skills to pass our exam. So our credentials are based on what practitioners can do, not just what they know. Our questions on our exam are reviewed annually to make sure that they're functioning and to make sure that questions aren't being compromised or stolen. We also do a complete revision of our exams against actual practice every 5 to 7 years, or sooner if there's a significant practice change. And this includes practitioners worldwide, not just the US, because we need to make sure that we reflect global practice that's not tied to regulations in any single country. Some of the rigor in our credentialing model comes from having to meet accreditation standards from multiple organizations, such as ISO standards under ANSI, or now ANAB, and NCCA standards under ICE. Each accreditor has different areas of emphasis to help us to continue to maintain quality in not just our exam, but our entire credentialing system or credentialing programs. And finally, we have a really high bar for eligibility to sit for our exams. We don't require just proof of education. We require work experience at the professional level that's confirmed by supervisory and practitioner references. And for recertification, we require evidence of a continuing education with service to the profession and the community. So how do we recertify? As an organization, BGC has several roles that are effectively the same as a licensing body. So we assess the current practice in the profession. We develop examinations based on that assessment. We determine criteria for eligibility to sit for exams. And we develop procedures for recertification, so just becoming recertified. We assure the independence of our board for decision-making. We assure ethical practice among practitioners, and we assure the security and quality of our exams. The foundations for credentialing exams come from probability and statistics. And probability theory is applied to credentialing exams to make test questions and exams better at distinguishing between people who know the right answers to questions and people who don't. So for example, when writing a question, we expect that high-achieving examinees will be more likely to know the correct answer from incorrect answers and do better on exams than low-achieving examinees. So when a high achiever answers a question correctly and low achievers answer a question incorrectly, the exam question is functioning as we expect. But if high achievers, or excuse me, if high achievers consistently answer a question incorrectly, or if low achievers answer questions correctly, then the exam is not functioning and we need to revise or remove the question from the exam. A fundamental principle of credentialing exams is that questions are based not on theory or book knowledge alone. They have to reflect practice to assure that practitioners have the skill required for the real world. This is because classroom theory may be too expensive or too new to be actually practiced in the real world. So we don't test for it until it's proven to be viable and adopted by practitioners in the workplace. Even though we don't test for future practice, we can actually make practice change more quickly by requiring anybody who applies for the exam to have learned future practice techniques, and by requiring current practitioners to learn new practices as a requirement for recertification or for keeping their credential. And then once a new practice becomes established, we update the exam to reflect that. One other thing I didn't mention was that on our exam, we have 180 questions, but only 150 of those questions are actually scored. 30 of those items are pilot questions or pilot items that we use to make sure that they function correctly before we actually put them into the real exam for use for scored items. And so those are a few techniques that we use to evaluate the quality of an item and the exam to make sure the examination can determine when to pass or fail examinees. I'm going to turn this over back to you, Alan.
Thank you, Ulrich. So I promised that I would talk about some of the challenges that we faced, not only over the past year, but over the past several years as we started integrating the diverse credentials that we brought on board. One of the challenges is that we depend a lot on automation for maintaining credentials and understanding that people are maintaining their required educational systems and ethical requirements that we have in each of the credentials. So we are working to automate the programs, make sure that the CIH program works, make sure that the other programs that came to us with different automation schemes can get integrated into that. We're also working on integrating where appropriate the diverse credentials that we have. We have been using the CIH as kind of the model, but not every credential needs to be at that high level. There are different needs for different bodies, for different practitioners. And so we look at that in the light of what's appropriate for each credential. We have gradations in the credentials. For example, the product stewardship folks are pretty much at the same level as the CIH, but the QEPs and the auditing folks are credentialed or have a slightly lesser rigor at this point that's going to be increased as appropriate to ensure that the integrity of our practitioners can be guaranteed. We also work to ensure our financial sustainability. For the most part, the only credential that really is sustaining all of the others is the CIH. It is the global standard that a lot of folks focus on and recognize and recommend. But we decided that we owed it to the community to bring on some of these other, to be perfectly honest, credentials that were facing some challenges. And we've been supporting them through the work that we have done with the CIH to bring them into a financially sustainable framework. We're ensuring that the continuity of our volunteer decisions are in place, that the decisions that we make and the folks who participate in our practices will be appropriate going forward, and dealing with current events. And on the next slide, we'll talk about the current event that we've all had to deal with. What did we do about COVID-19? We gave all candidates a 6-month extension. We're allowed to do that by our different protocols, and that's pretty typical. Different credentialing bodies did different things, but 6 months is pretty standard. We moved the QEP and the EPI exams to exam centers with health and safety protocols. All of our exam centers had very specific protocols. We did make diplomats eligible for an additional 6-month extension for their certification points, certification maintenance. We sent information on where to find online coursework. You know, one of the things that people struggled with for a lot of our credential holders, they were used to getting their credentials, their management points from attending conferences. Conferences didn't happen. So we had to help folks in understanding how they could make up that requirement. We didn't lessen our requirements. We gave some extensions, but we also really tried to direct people where they could get online information. We also worked with specific individuals who had financial hardships because they perhaps lost a job or had some sort of delay in payments based on COVID. And we were also prepared and remain prepared to make additional changes as needed. You know, to a certain extent, we're starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel here in the US, but as Ulrich mentioned, we are a global credential, and a lot of the folks are in a more challenging situation, and we're still working with a number of people to make sure that we can accommodate and help them where they need it. One of our primary focuses is for all of our credentials to be not just technical, but we want practitioners to be good representatives of the profession. We think that's essential. We have a very rigorous process for ensuring and evaluating ethical practice. We spend a lot of time dealing with concerns that people raise about individual practitioners. There's a very elaborate process that's followed. For us, when we do an evaluation, it's a process that has to be reviewed on a regular basis by attorneys to make sure we meet laws, because we're talking about people's careers, their practice, their financial ability to earn a living. And when somebody raises a concern about one of our practitioners, it can mean a real challenge to them if for some reason we have to take away their CIH or other credential. And so we don't do that lightly. We're also proud of our partnerships that we have around the world. In addition to working with your organization, we also work with all the other NAR organizations, and we are looking for opportunities for working with other credential holders, the different safety. When we had a conversation setting up this discussion, we talked about the work that was being done in Canada with the safety societies and the industrial hygiene folks. We're looking at similar things here in the US, and we are looking at partnering with a number of universities to look at that pipeline of the people who eventually will become our certificants, make sure they're aware of us, make sure they exist. While we may be the best known in some of our different areas, we're not the best known in every area. And even the CIH, if you tell someone you're a CIH, it means something within the professional community, doesn't mean a lot outside of the professional community. So that everybody struggles with recognition, it may be just at different levels. Finally, our path forward. Again, we are focused on aligning our credentials. We're on a holding pattern right now. We're not looking at acquiring any new credentials. We've got our hands full right now. There's a lot going on that we have to work our way through. Focused on achieving our mission. We'll be doing an update of our strategic plan this year, making sure of our processes all fit the mission and vision that we have for the organization. We're aligning all of our different written documents. And one of the things that we found was that a lot of the documents that had been created over the years to deal with specific issues really didn't fit how practice was happening within the organization. So that's all being updated. Big task. Every document we have is being updated this year to really match the way we do business. And we are looking forward to continuing to collaborate with the global OEHS community, not just credentialing bodies, but with the bodies like AIHA and similar organizations around the world. And that's kind of our focus going forward. I don't know what the intention is, if we're going to have some time for questions, but both Ulrich and I are available for questions if you have any.
Thank you. Yes, we do have time for questions. Thank you very much, Larry, Ulrich, and Alan. This was interesting. I'm very pleased that we are welcoming you with us today. We're going to move to a question period. I haven't seen any question on the chat, but if anyone would like to send a question, you can either write it or you can just mention that you'd like to ask a question, and Lucy will give you a chance to talk and ask your question. So we have about 10, 15 minutes that we can allow for questions. So I could start with one. Personally, I was excited when I saw the new rebranding of AIHA. One thing that I liked about it, well, it's the in-depth search that you've done, right? It comes from a science-based approach, and it's the term you used it, Larry, but not too strong. It's science. Occupational health and safety scientist is a term that I've seen in your document that I like a lot to use, and when I use it with customers, it is making it clear for them for sure. The question is, like we see two sides of it. Like there's the occupational health and safety scientists, and there's a big group of the occupational health and safety managers that often come from the HR side of things. Do you feel like your new branding unite them all, or is there still a distinction between the managers of occupational health and safety and the scientists? Larry,
Good
if you're
question.
still with
Yes.
us.
Yes, I'm still here. Can you hear me? Yes.
We got
The
you
answer,
good, got you good.
yeah, okay. The answer is no. I don't think that the rebranding was really meant to necessarily engage the managers. The managers, we refer to the managers as EHS or SHE, and a lot of those managers are really schooled in either environmental or safety. Unfortunately, those that are schooled in occupational hygiene or industrial hygiene often don't make it to those top level EHS director or VP positions. And so as we talk about our outreach campaigns, one of the target audiences that we're focusing on specifically is EHS management, senior management, whether they're VPs or directors, because these are the folks that are managing either industrial or occupational hygienists, or they're responsible for bringing in a consultant who performs those occupational hygiene services. So we need to educate those EHS managers as to the value that we bring. But that particular suite of professionals is really not in our target audience as far as bringing in those folks as members.
Thank you, Larry. That's going to help us in our future reflection. Well, maybe I have a question for the BGC member. I believe, Ulrich, you mentioned we are more than industrial hygienists, and that makes you realize that we come from different fields and there's other things to do. From the AIHA side, there's the product stewardship, and from your side, there's bringing the environmental expertise too. So what does that mean to you? We are more than just industrial hygienists.
Actually, that was a statement by Alan, so I'm going to turn that over to Alan.
Oh, okay, Alan.
Yeah, not a problem. Or could have answered it, but like any good CEO, he defers to his chair. But no, what we're talking about, we still are industrial hygienists. I mean, that's the whole CIH credential. That's our largest credential. It is the most well-respected of our credentials around the world. But we do see ourselves, as AIHA does, I know, as part of a global OEHS community. And it's not just industrial hygienists. We happen to have a few other credentials, our product stewardship, our environmental credentials, our environmental auditing credentials, we're very proud of, and we think they're essential. We brought them on board because we wanted to make sure that they would have a real lifespan and could continue to contribute to the profession. But we're not the only ones out there. I mean, there's the safety professionals, there's radiation professionals, there's toxicologists, there's any number of professionals that are out there that we need to be partnering with. And I'm personally very excited as a member of BGC and AIHA to see the collaboration that's happening between not only US organizations, but global organizations and the folks who represent their communities within each country.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Question from Paul Bozak here. Does OEHS mean that AIHA will be encouraging hygienists to participate in more traditional safety tasks, or is it just to associate IH work with the EHS integrated team?
It is a great question, Paul. Nice to hear from you. It is the latter. We're not expecting that the core AIHA member is going to be doing more safety, although a lot of our members do practice in the safety space, and they also practice in the environmental space, right? Some of them are wearing multiple hats, but rather we're saying, and I was actually just going to type this, what we're saying is that AIHA needs to provide more tailored education for all the different stripes of folks that are under the OEHS umbrella. So if you are an EHS generalist, or let's say you're a safety professional, let's say you just have your CSP, then we want to make sure that if you need to be doing a little bit of the health aspect in your job, we want to provide you with the right education, the H in EHS, for your specific needs. So we're not assuming that our core members are going to be doing more safety. It's the opposite. We want to make sure that we're providing the right level of education to those that are generalists or more in the safety space when they need it.
Thank you, Larry.
We have another.
Lucy?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So we have another question from Brent Shopping, who Has the organization spoken with or considered collaboration with the BCSP? It would seem to be a good fit given to the OEHS moniker. Thanks.
Yeah, this is Ulrich. We actually are collaborating with BCSP right now. So I believe it was around May or April, we did a joint presentation, and we're going to be doing another joint presentation in November. And we're talking about different ways to align our credentials. So we're looking at how our credentials map to one another to allow people to obtain new credentials or get information about how to attain different credentials. So yeah, that's happening right now.
And I would say thank you, Ulrich, for introducing me to their CEO, Christy. And she and I had a conversation about a month ago. And we also, AIHA, is looking to figure out how we can partner with BCSP because BCSP is getting a little bit into the education space. So we want to make sure we stay in our swim lane. We don't want to go into the safety swim lane. We want to stay in the health swim lane. So if BCSP is going to be developing some materials and they start to get into that H or health space, we want to figure out a way that we might partner with them.
Sure does look like what we're trying to achieve here.
We have another question from
Yes.
from Lydia for Ulrich. So, can you speak to the challenges around becoming ISO 17025 certified? I'm interested in this one too.
Well, I think I was fairly lucky in coming to the organization because it was already ISO certified when I got here. But there are a lot of moving parts in ISO certification, and so it's mainly about, honestly, it's mainly about managing your documentation and maintaining your checklists. I mean, that's really what it comes down to in a lot of the cases. Specifically for our credentialing practice, they do have high requirements though for how you develop your exam. So they do make sure that you have or follow psychometric practices. And if you make a change, they don't necessarily care that you make the change, but they do care that you have a justification and a scientifically valid justification for the changes you make. So I think that requires, again, a high level of documentation and making sure that you're keeping your eye on what's important and keeping a sound credentialing program.
Sorry, I see the comment about Larry also about the AIHA lab accreditation program, and this is quite a good program and essential to the profession that hygienists can relate to more than the basic health and safety professional in general. But that's been for years such an. It used to be I don't know, you weren't there. It used to be the ISO Guide 25. That was the basic lab accreditation system. We don't seem to have any more question coming up, but we can open the floor to the question to the about our meeting, and perhaps Larry, Ulrich, and Alan, maybe you have question from us in terms of how you see the future as our favorite neighbors.
Mark, I just do have one more comment.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. Thanks for the presentations, guys. And Larry, your first slide there on the overview of explaining everything, that took me years to figure out when I started in hygiene, so I wish I had that previously. But with your mission statement and the new sort of umbrella that it says protecting community as well, did you guys ever get any feedback or pushback from the environmental accreditations saying anything about, IH sort of getting into their space? Or
No, and it's interesting with all the years of research that we did with a variety of professionals, both AIHA members as well as folks outside of the core AIHA membership. We went to folks that were, affiliated with other organizations as well during the focus group work. And I think the point of the OEHS is not so much that our members are necessarily going to be doing environmental testing, permitting type work, if you will, the traditional environmental compliance work, but it's the environmental space, it's the built space and the effect that it has on the worker. So for example, a lot of our members are doing mold remediation or they're doing Legionella control. And so when you talk about the pandemic and the fact you've had all these buildings that have been shut down for months and then they have to reopen, the water systems have been stagnated. So you have to worry about things like mold and Legionella. And so that's the E part in OEHS and what the impact of that E has on the worker, which is the H part.
So Mark, you asked if we have questions for you. So I have a question. So do you have any ideas, or are you considering any kind of collaboration with VGC in the future? I know we've talked about sharing information about the CIHs practicing in Canada, but do you have any vision for future collaborations with us, and vice versa?
Well, and I'll let Sarah answer too, but I'll answer first. I think the first question we need to clarify, and Lucy will, is how many CIH are also ROH, and how many ROH are also CIH, and how many are different. So when we report globally how many industrial hygienists there is in the world, that we have the right number. So we'll try to cover that up in the next weeks to come. But I'm also we're small, and when you're small, it shouldn't be an excuse not to get things happen. And I used to have a manager that was saying, beg, borrow, and steal. The steal is a bit bad, but beg, borrow. We built on the work that our big brothers from America are doing in so many ways. So when I think, like, for example, when with the safety professional, you're gonna develop a competency framework. We will do it too, and maybe get those things together to build from each other, and that helps us have something that is more sustainable, because it's kind of the same way, and we set the step for the world together. So these types of things that I think about first. Yes, and from the AIHA side, in Canada, you understand that we don't. So we have the credential organization, which is us, and then the local organization that are more open to memberships. So you don't have to be a CIH to be member of AIHA. You have to be a CIH to be on the credentials side of things. So us, we have this separated in 10 blocks. And some of those blocks are attached to AIHA, some are independent, like Ontario and Quebec in particulars. So there's things that we might want to look at with AIHA in terms of how do we make that American Industrial Hygiene Canada section so we can help each other. Because there are things that are specific to our country, and if all our hygienists are registered in the US, it makes it difficult for us when it comes down to influence legislators. So that's some of the challenge that we might continue the open mic with you. Sorry, I was a little long. Sarah, you want to add something to that?
No, I think you covered it well. I guess my only add would be that, I think we're always open for collaboration and open communication with each other. So I would like to see that continue, but I think Mark has covered everything else.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would just say, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, this is Larry again. You see in the chat box that there are local sections across Canada. There's Lawrence Virchev chiming in. One of the things that we strive to do is that the OSHA just released their emergency temporary standard this morning, which is a big deal. And one of the things that we'd like to be able to do is to make sure that the folks north of the border understand, well, what is this ETS all about? How does it work? And is there a way that ETS could influence or affect what's happening in Canada? And so we have a very rich dialogue across the border with our members who are in a position to help advocate on behalf of the profession with the various provinces in Canada. And I understand the provinces operate rather autonomously across your country. So whatever we can do to help provide you with best in class, or I don't even know if it's best in class, but intelligence from south of the border, we're happy to do it.
Oh, just lost you a little bit. I don't know if it's just on my side or not,
That's
but
it.
totally, actually. Yes, Larry.
I'm finished.
Okay, well, actually, we do have so you know Lawrence. So with Lawrence, we do have a group that is getting together to start talking about pretty much the same thing as the health the new COVID health standard that was presented in the U.S. And the only thing is, when it gets across, there needs to be some tweaking in terms of the regulatory context, the units, right? We use the metrics unit, little things like that helps flow information from one side to the other, and I think the CRBOH could be a good starting point to have more American type of approach. Yes. CSA developing a respiratory standard. Yes. Thank you, Lawrence. At this point, I believe we are getting close to the end of our meeting. That was so fantastic. Thank you very much to all the presenter. And I'd like to give the mic to Sarah for closing remarks, and as she starts her new mission as the CRBOH president. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for joining today, and thank you to the presenters. That was informative, and it was Mark's idea to do something non-COVID related, since we were probably all sick of hearing anything COVID related. So again, if there's any questions or concerns about the AGM, feel free to send some questions to Leah, our secretariat, and the email's in the chat there, and we will likely be sending out a survey as well, like we did last year. So again, thanks for everybody's time, and we'll chat soon. Mark, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I just hope that we see everybody in person next year.
Yes.
Wear your mask, keep your distance, use proper ventilation.
Yes.
Thank you
Take
very
care,
much.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Well done, guys. Bye-bye.